The growing problem in higher education. For decades, Black land-grant institutions have received less funding than predominantly white schools, leaving faculty and students to fill in the gaps. The Washington Post reported that more than $12 billion is in the deficit of lost funds. Tennessee State University is one of many schools fighting to gain what is owed. We made a campus visit last spring to find out what's being done. Coming home weekend at Tennessee State University.
I love that TSU has made it through so many generations.
A chance for proud alum to mix it up with current students about their common TSU Tiger experience. Both the good and bad of having to do more with less.
There were times when we may not have had running water. There was times we didn't have heat.
As a professor in the music department, I'm still playing on instruments that's been here since 1962 that are older than me.
The culprit? Debt. $2.1 billion of it. Money the Biden administration says the state of Tennessee owes the university.
It's more than that, though. That's only half of it.
Tennessee State first woman president, Dr. Glenda Glover, was at the helm of the discovery. When did you realize that TSU wasn't getting the funding it should?
The CFO and I were going through the financial statements, and I kept noticing this line that said transfer.
Transfer meaning?
So that was the question. So it's like, transfer, what are we transferring? And her response was, that's the funding that we're not receiving from the state.
There's a long history. Funding of public land-grant colleges began during the Civil War with the Morrill Land Act of 1862. It provided resources for every state to set up public institutions with a focus on agricultural resources in education. But Black students were rarely admitted. So in 1890, the federal government gave states two options: accept Black students or fund a separate school for them. Most Southern states chose the latter. By law, they were supposed to equitably distribute what the feds paid out by a 1-to-1 ratio. But according to Tennessee's own budget records, the state didn't do that for more than 100 years.
Here are budget books in here from 1957 to 2020.
Representative and TSU alum Dr. Harold Love Jr. now chairs the committee investigating where the money went.
So you look at UT's funding here. You see UT Ag, UT Ag. Tennessee State, no land grant funding.
So no funding?
Not even in the budget.
His father, Representative Harold Love Sr., raised the issue back in 1970 and authored a report he sent to state lawmakers. Why would they shelve this information?
I think you're talking about systems where people put money in the budget, the next group of bureaucrats carry out that work, and you go into decades and decades and decades of this.
Well, let's talk about the people in charge now.
Sure. The initial response from most people down here was that the underfunding did not happen. But we said, no, Tennessee State is different. There's a federal law that requires that we be funded in an equitable and just manner. We're like UT. We're supposed to get land grant matching funds.
President Glover says the university did receive funding, just never a full match.
So my first response was, why don't we compare to the other land grant university to see how they're faring with their match?
You raised the issue.
Yes.
One example, in 2015, the state owed UT Knoxville, a predominantly white college, less than $16 million, but paid out $58.9 million, nearly 4 times more. In comparison, TSU should have received $6.5 million, but only got $5.7 million. In 2023, the Department of Education released a 30-year study confirming nearly $13 billion is owed to land-grant HBCUs across the country.
let's acknowledge that they're punching above their weight while not getting the funding that they should have gotten.
And several federal agencies issued letters calling on every governor to pay up what they owe. Tennessee Governor Bill Lee responded.
We funded it every year since I've been here. And in fact, last year, as you know, we funded over $300 million, a historic amount that was unprecedented up until that time.
According to TSU, that $250 million he's referencing is a one-time budget item set to fund facility upgrades on campus, not part of their yearly take. Students have refused to remain silent.
It is our time to take what is ours.
We spoke to some of them on the front lines, including Davin Latiker and Victoria McCrae.
It's like the value of the students here is $4,000 less than the values of the students there.
And it's not just black students.
It's not.
Any student, of which you have many non-black students who attend this historically black college and university.
I think at a certain point you stop looking at it from black versus white to it's just being right from wrong.
Yeah.
And to see that every student has been undervalued at the dollar amount just shows our value as a people and our value as a student.
Civil rights attorney Ben Crump now represents TSU students.
In 2024, we're still having to fight these battles.
This is a historic civil rights battle. It is going to be a watershed moment in American history.
For a lot of people sitting at home, this seems like a pretty cut and dry matter. The federal government put the money on the table. The states were supposed to issue it to the schools. They didn't. Why don't they just pay the debt?
It is, I believe, correlates with what's going on in America now with this attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion.
What can be done about it?
We're going to strategically work with a coalition around the country. That's the only way you win this battle. You want to get good precedent established.
Let me just ask, is there a timetable? What's the deadline for them to react to the demand?
Yesterday.
We tried to speak. We sent a request to Governor Bill Lee. We were not given an interview, or request for an interview was denied. We should note that people say there have been repercussions. One, the state demanded a financial audit. That audit came back with no evidence of fraud or malfeasance. Yet the Board of Trustees was removed. Some say that the president of the university was pushed out. They now have a new president, and to date, there is no evidence that that $2.1 billion that's owed has been paid.
Repercussions for them looking for asking for the money.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.